It's delightful to be here, and thanks, Pete, for the opportunity to come and talk to you all in the room. Hello, Russell. How are you? Lovely to see you. I'm going to talk about something that you'll get a sense that I'm pretty passionate about, because actually, if there's not a reason to leap out of bed in the morning and rush to work, then don't. And if you're not passionate about what you're doing in your organisation, about driving transformational change in whatever manner you want to do it, don't. Because all you are is, as was mentioned before, waste. You are all leaders in your organisations. You have accountabilities to make stuff happen. And I was a lover, not a fighter. I was in the Navy, not the Army. And, you know, to get out of bed every day and do something that makes a difference, changes things, changes people, changes organisations, creates value across the enterprise, is what it's all about. And you all, to a person, have the opportunity to do that. And I think these types of sessions that we're running today, you know, equip you with some more kit. Because there's no one right answer. And my view is it's actually all about the application. So what I'm going to talk about, there we go, is an approach. You know, there's only one methodology type of thing in the world, and I put that down to the Jesuits. The Jesuits, you give them a boy at 7, they'll give you a man at 18. I don't subscribe to method, and I don't subscribe to absolute relentless adherence to a method. And I know Ray's going to ask me a question about agile, and I'll give you a point of view through the presentation. But actually it's about using your intellect, your experience, your capability around application. Because there's 1,000 ways to do things. And there's 100 ways in which the application of those 1,000 ways are actually correct. But there's lots of things that you need to think about and lots of considerations that you need to have in order to make these things work. So I'm going to talk about the approach to delivery. One size doesn't fit all. If it's PMBOK, if it's you know, any of the methods that you've got, if you follow the steps relentlessly, accurately, without thought, guess what? You won't succeed. So project management is not a panacea for walking away from your responsibility, your accountability to apply your brain. It's not a checkbox exercise. It's actually about knowing what to use, when to use it, how to use it. And again, one size does not fit all. We all, probably in this room, we've got organisations that are made up of 100 people, organisations that are made up of 45,000 people, organisations that span the globe. One size doesn't fit all. I'm going to talk about the right tools and templates. Who enjoys filling out a template? Nah, hate it. But you've got to have more than a blank piece of paper. And I'm going to share some ideas around that and how you can take that and apply it. Consistency. So my background is really around leading technology to enable business outcomes and business transformation. And I'm a real fan of enterprise architecture and the religious adherence to having consistency around how you apply your architectural overlays in order to get consistency. And consistency drives the opportunity for reuse, the opportunity for exploitation in a good way, the opportunity to actually create value in your enterprise to actually make a difference. I'm going to talk about setting up for success. If you don't have a mindset of wanting to set up for success, you will fail. It's just you won't realise that you failed because you've gone, oh, now I need to rework. We feed, and PMP, this is, I know you do great project rescues, you do great bayoneting of the wounded in the battlefield, it's fantastic, but we need people like PMP because we don't set up for success. And that's something that takes discipline, it's something that takes focus, but also it's something that takes understanding and application of your intellect. And finally, transforming an organisation to outcomes focused. I really want us to get in the mindset of it's about the outcome. Because we've got such a choice, a myriad of choice around the inputs. We shouldn't constrain ourselves by, as I said, a particular method to put inputs in. We should use our experience, the experience of our teams, the experience of our business partners, the experience of what's happening in the media, et cetera, and we should use that to become outcomes focused. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the outcome. Now, a lot of people will tell you, as you're sitting around the fire at 3 a.m. in the morning singing Kumbaya, but what about the journey? The journey's important, absolutely, but the outcome is what counts. And that's what we get marked for. I heard the comments about business case tracking. Absolutely, it's a sponsor. The sponsor abrogates the responsibility to the EPMO or to the project director. Bang, they're on easy street. They've got a throat to choke. They don't care. But the sponsor, if it's tied to their financial benefits, if it's tied to their remuneration, to the success of their team, to the maintenance of their actual role, they will be very focused on the benefits. And the best way to get benefits to stick, put them in their plan. Get the financial tracking that actually goes from once the project is executed to, hey, you said you were going to deliver $100 million of revenue uplift. Guess what? Target's just gone up $100 million. Or you're going to deliver $50,000 or $500,000 of cost reduction. Guess what? Your budget's just gone down. And then you measure them on that post-implementation. And then I'm going to do a case study example. And this is a real-life example. I'm only 25 and I look terribly much older than that. But this is sort of, there are a lot of senior delivery folk and senior leaders out there who actually have got there because they've done their time. So a lot of this stuff you don't read in a textbook. A lot of this stuff you actually have to go and do. And one of the things I love about the way in which we're thinking about getting stuff done now is the whole concept of fail fast. But don't fail fast, fail often. Fail fast, learn, and don't fail for that same reason again. But fail fast. Don't fail by betting the balance sheet of the organisation either. You've got to learn from it. But the constant iteration, and I'll share that with you in a fairly major program that I led a number of years ago, that I took the learnings from it, and I've almost applied every single day since then. So let's cut to it. As I said, it's all about the approach, the application, the opportunity to share, ideate, apply. But it's all about the approach. So with that concept in mind, as I said, what I want to talk to you about is, from my experiences, what you can get out of a program office, program management structure, tools and techniques overlay that will actually help you be successful. Hands up, anyone who really loves to go to work and fail and not be successful. This is about setting you guys up to be successful, setting you guys up so that when you wake up in the morning, bang, I'm out the door because I'm going to make a difference. Some really and I covered those things off previously, but some really interesting statistics. You get this right, you get this stuff right, your organisation will praise you and reward you and recognise you. The industry will reward you and recognise you. You will be seen as a leader. You're also going to deliver a 30% dividend within 2 years. That's important because guess what? Everyone in this room is about creating value. And tangible value that moves organisations to better places. Really interesting statistic. The longevity of a company was 65 years. Now it's 5. Well, guess what? It's a tough world out there. You want to be part of the organisation that's actually going to continually evolve and continually meet market challenges and continually win in the market. You've got to be having this sort of mindset. Organisations across the industry, financial services in particular, but across industries more broadly, are investing billions of dollars. And most of you people in this room have a huge role to play in ensuring that that investment returns value to the organisation and to the shareholder. So ensuring that we are effective in the manner in which we do our work and we achieve and where we possibly can exceed the expectations of the organisation. The business case should be a starter for 10. And we should be thinking about how can we exceed the business case? How can we take this organisation to a better place? Because as I'll show you in the outcomes-focused approach, the business case is thinking at a moment in time. And whoever pulled out a business case after delivering a program over an 18-month period and read it and went, really? Is that what we're going to do? Because actually the environment in which you execute in actually evolves at a great rate of knots. So the approach that I like to take is underpinned by a common set of tools. I'm not going to subscribe it or prescribe it. We're all consenting adults in the room. You all have experience. You all know what you do best. But I'm not going to say you must use this. You could, you should, under certain circumstances. You may, if it so takes your fancy. Back to my template comment. I used to love using templates. I used to say to people, look, I just need the gist. I don't need you to fill it out religiously. I just need to know that you've actually thought about a whole heap of stuff. So put not applicable in that section, because it tells me that you've had a thought and gone, will I be cutting code in this project? Not applicable. Okay, good. Guess what? Because I'm rolling out an infrastructure project, or I'm doing a change piece, or I'm doing something else. Common frameworks for governance and roles and responsibilities, and I'll share some of those with you in just a moment. Scalable application of the tools, sharing of experiences and resolution. Go into the room full of mirrors, take a long look at yourself. You are your greatest asset. Person sitting next to you in the PMO or in the project team or in the organisation, around the board table, wherever it might be, they are your greatest assets. If you stand alone, you will fail alone. If you stand together, you will succeed together. So really think about how you actually share that experience, learn from that experience, but it's not just about an individual, it's about a team. And again, what I'm loving about the spice that gets added through the whole concept of agile and agile methods is actually we're celebrating the fact that as a group we can do much more, much faster, much more effectively than we can as an individual. So it's really all about the team. So this is, an outcomes focus isn't always easy. How many times have you picked up a project team that are on redeployment? It's the nature of the way in which we fund our projects as a fungible workforce internally that says, okay, we're going to roll these folks out, and they've run out of project. Oh, but here comes another project. There goes your team. I did that a couple of years ago, and I tell you what, they called us the Dirty Dozen, the Lee Marvin film, because these guys were just about to leave the organisation. I tell you, most of them are still in the organisation that I left a couple of years ago. I didn't get redeployed, I chose to leave. But they were just not the right people at the time. But by the time we'd finished as a team working together, they were absolutely the right people, and they went on to deliver some really complex and interesting and challenging outcomes. Other aspects along this is a lack of delivery culture. As leaders in your organisation, you've got to drive that delivery culture. You've got to be intolerant of people that really enjoy average. You've got to be intolerant of the people that don't challenge and ask the question, that say, but wait a minute, why is this going to be better? How can we take this to another place? Other issues on here, we lose sight of the outcomes, especially on long multi-year projects. We lose sight of what it is that we're doing. How can we, technology overlay, how can we possibly deliver something in technology over 5 years when Moore's Law is telling us that every year everything is doubling? So we do lose sight of the outcome, and we do lose the context in which it's being delivered, which means we have to address that, and we address that through the way in which we set ourselves up. Watering down to the strategy. Gold-plated strategy, bronze funding. Nothing worse. How many times do we have to fit the scope into the envelope? But wait a minute, that scope into the envelope actually doesn't give us the strategic intent or deliver the strategic intent that we're trying to deliver. Really problematic. And as a leader, either within an EPMO or a PMO or as a project manager, project director, etc. Don't be the whipping person. Don't go, okay, I will take this on and I will deliver the gold-plated solution for the bronze investment. Be really challenging with your sponsor to say, hey, time and cost are the two pillars that support requirement outcome. Be very mindful of that. Now, it's easy for me to stand up here and say that. You'll go back to your organisation and you'll confront your sponsor and they'll say, right, you don't quite fit this culture, we'll get someone who agrees with me. And that's pretty hard. But be courageous, be bold, because you are the guys that will make it happen. Absolutely. A few more takeouts on this one. Whose organisation, you don't have to say which organisation it is, or who has worked in an organisation that has actually had an unimplementable strategy? So what you have to think about there is you have to go, okay, because not all of it can be unimplementable. Some of it must be implementable. So you dissect it down, and through your portfolio prioritisation and the way in which you think about the outcomes that you're going to drive, you actually find the essence and the gold in that project, in that strategy that can be implemented. Okay, so the approach is underpinned by some fairly simple rules. Now I'm going to skip through these pretty quickly. Agree objectives. I mean, this is all 101 stuff. And what I love about my career is nothing has ever been terribly complicated because I'm simple. And if you do the simple stuff extraordinarily well, it comes out pretty well. So don't make it too complicated. Establish command. Command's a bad word because it implies hierarchy and authority and leadership, but it also suggests followship. So establish who's accountable for what, who's responsible for what, and make sure that lines up. Responsibilities. Does anyone feel that they're not absolutely clear on what their responsibilities and accountabilities are in the current role that they've got? Absolutely. It's the hardest thing, especially in large, complex, matrix corporates. But it's something that you constantly have to ask. And if you are a junior person, ask your manager, what actually do you want me to do? And as you become more senior in organisations, you'll have to deal with ambiguity, of which establishing responsibilities is part, but you have to also be responsible to ensure that those people working for you have clarity. Plan all dates backwards from D-Day, simple. I ran a program for the City of Sydney as I was getting ready for the Sydney Olympics, and the way we got the gig was we walked into the City Council and we said, in 3 years' time, 150,000 people will move from Hyde Park to Darling Harbour. Are you ready for that? The blood drained out of their faces, and we got the gig to actually help them set up the program and portfolio to get City of Sydney ready to meet that obligation and requirement. And we did it from, okay, we're here now, how do we get to that point where 150,000 people can move seamlessly in accordance with the Olympic overlay from this point to this point? Every team member must have their own program. So again, it's all about the integration of the people and the capability that are working for you. If you work in a large organisation, you get to a point in the middle of the month when you need an authorisation or approval at the end of the month that you then go through a series of meetings in order to get sign-offs prior to getting the final approval. It's called governance. And unless you plan well in advance what that governance needs to be, you know, I'm in a process at the moment where I'm getting to the board on the 28th of October. The journey to get to the board on the 28th of October started 6 weeks ago. And we now have everything planned out that we need to do. So you've got to do those, because there's nothing worse than when you've got momentum that suddenly you hit the brick wall that says, oh, you forgot these 5 things. Or you didn't get that sign-off, therefore didn't go to the risk committee, therefore we're not going to approve it. Especially if you're dealing with, for example, moving stuff to the cloud. The overlay now around controls and around the regulator and how the regulator views that, you've got to make sure that all those ducks are lined up, because when it gets to the board to sign that off, they'll be saying, well, okay, are we within our risk appetite? Have you thought these things through? Circulate information religiously. That doesn't mean once a week, by the way. That means you've got to be really disciplined about ensuring that all your stakeholders and all the people that are participating with what you're doing are actually across what you're doing because you've circulated the information. Progress relentlessly. So lots of adverbs here. Lots of, this is about energy and drive and passion. It's not about letting the process happen, it's actually about driving the process. 2 more. Check budgets regularly. You live and die by your ability to deliver to cost. So make sure you've got the right processes and tools, templates in play that allow you to actually know where you are from a financial perspective. Because at the end of the day, who works with finance people often? Terribly easygoing folk who don't have a great deal of structure in the way in which they think about things, not necessarily particularly perturbed if something doesn't quite hit the mark. That's why you guys have to be better than that. You have to understand what CapEx actually means. You have to understand an amortisation horizon. You have to understand that if you bring in off a rate card a certain set of contractors to do work, that'll have a different implication on how your forecasting goes moving forward. You've got to understand that actually paying forward is not necessarily a good idea, because you end up paying more at the back end. And finally, resist alterations ruthlessly. I'm not saying be a change. Be fearful of change, because things will always move, but really make sure that it's not just a whim. Challenge. Why do you want to change course now? Let's understand that, and let's make that change for a good reason. I'm a person that likes to kill projects. I give them 90 days. 90 days, if you're not tracking, if you're not doing what you need to do, if you're not aligning to what we need to be doing, if you're starting to put in your change request because you got your scope wrong, then you're out of here. Let's see what the next best cab off the rank is. Okay, so the approach is based on a fairly simple model. Doing things. We love doing things. As humans, we get satisfaction out of doing the right things, because there's nothing worse than coming to work and doing the wrong things. But then the secret sauce in all of this is doing the right things right. Now you're sitting there going, okay, I'm now in 5th grade, and this is a really inspirational view of the right things, etc., etc. How many of you are really confident right now that within the programs and projects you're running, you know that you're doing the right things? What's your confidence around doing those right things right? Where is your assurance overlay to ensure that what you're going to deliver is exactly what your organisation needs, and that actually the quality hurdles of each and every one of those tasks actually meets that requirement? So the 3 C's, control, coordination, communication, pretty traditional view, and we're evolving that constantly because as we overlay the need to have agile ways of working, to be nimble in our organisation, these things are still pretty important because you need to have control over what's going on. But now you can do that in different dynamic ways. You need to be able to coordinate, especially in multi-programs, multi-stream programs. I'm a real advocate of, if I can understand what's happening across the whole portfolio, then I can get leverage. So if I'm building a new core bank, as an example, I want to make sure that the guy doing the infrastructure transformation is actually building out cloud capability so that when I run my new core bank, I run it in a cost environment that is less than it would be if I was to put it onto traditional metal. I want to know that if I'm pushing change into the organisation that is changing a process for the customer, that I'm not putting 5 or 7 or 25 other changes into that environment that's going to confuse it for the customer and also the person that has to execute it. Communication, always relentless around communication. So lots of tools and techniques. A lot of this is very self-evident, and I don't need to sort of go through each of those bubbles. And if you look at them and you don't recognise them, write them down and apply them. And they're all things that are sitting in various methodologies, but it's all about application. The one in the middle, standard reporting. Nothing worse than trying to get a view across a whole landscape and seeing that actually people are reporting differently. Because you can't get a like for like. You can't then make that value judgment. Do I stay or do I go on this particular initiative? So this is a generic governance structure, because at the end of the day, we operate in large organisations or small organisation, there's governance and oversight that needs to be applied. This is just a process, a method that I used, and it worked extremely effectively. This I actually used in a post-merger integration, one of the largest that's been done in this country in the last 15 years, and done in 11 months and 20 days, and business case was exceeded by about $150 to $250 million. The trick was getting those excos in the business units to actually be communicated with on a regular basis so that we could get rapid decision making at the exco at the top of the bank. The great thing there was actually the CEO of the bank was the sponsor. Always easy when you get leadership from the top. Consistent project management life cycles. Again, this is not prescriptive. This is more of an indicative approach. And these things, you've got your life cycles. This was one that was developed and has evolved subsequently. In fact, Russell actually evolved it to apply it into one of the big fours. But it's no rocket science. Subsequently, on this template, we've developed the agile overlay, the customer-centric design overlay, the way in which actually these processes flow in a manner that gives us the outcomes focus that we're driving towards. The scalability of tools, again, not every tool needs to be applied in its purest form every time. Make the judgment call around what you need and how you need it and where you need it. Don't allow yourself to say, well, the book says I've got to do it this way. It's only a $50,000 project or a $100,000 project, and you're using a $10 million project method. One of you will die. It'll either be the project or yourself personally. This is my favourite picture because I stole it from a really, really good friend of mine a number of years ago. And it sort of summarises exactly what I think about when setting up for success and when getting things in the right place. And again, you're all looking at it going, oh, would I need all of those? Well, ish, you do. Number 8 is important, benefit modelling. Always start with the end in mind, and that is always know that this is going to deliver a run rateable benefit of $150 million a year over the next 5 years because I'm going to bake that into someone's financial plan, but I've also modelled it because I know exactly it's going to come from either an uplift in revenue or a decrease in costs or however that comes together. Number 2 is a good one too, target progress reporting. Knowing where you are is much better in a project context than not knowing where you are. So when your sponsor says, are we on track? Yes, we are on track. Let's keep it moving. So program office is critical, and whatever shape, form, style, and it's interesting that there's a sense that program offices are becoming an overhead. I think they're a value generator. And I remember a number of years ago challenging a colleague about the fact that without a PMO, you may as well rush off into the dark without a torch. because your PMO is your torch, it illuminates. Now, there's some pretty standard activities that a PMO does, and the most important one for me is how you create the centre of excellence off your PMO. So I've just recently did a refurb of the PMO in a bank in New Zealand, and we created centres of excellence around change, around project management, and around business analysis, which actually has given a capability uplift because we've actually got people owning job family frameworks, we've got people doing things in a manner that actually gives them a place to live. This is just a complicated diagram that I thought I'd throw in just to make sure people were listening. But really, it's actually about the journey and about the types of tools that you apply, when and how and where you need them through the life cycle. So again, there's no rocket science. You guys probably are the most commonsensical people in your organisations. And you should cherish that. You should absolutely cherish that and should hold that fast, because you're the guys that make sure that we don't waste investment. You're the guys that make sure that we actually realise the benefits and actually achieve the outcomes that we're trying to deliver. But it's all about delivering on the strategy. And your ability to get the linkage from the strategy down through the portfolio of programs and projects into the executable outcomes that actually measure real benefit, change a customer experience, change the way in which a distribution network works, change the way in which an organisation's share price is dealt with in the market. It's all about the strategy. You are the critical link for that strategy. You are the people that execute it, you manage that execution. And there's a number of ways that you can do that. Understanding scale and capability to handle change. There's not much point in trying to, firstly, eat the elephant all at once without breaking it down into program bite-sized chunks. But there's nothing harder than feeding it to someone at once. You think about it in a banking context, our lowest paid employees sit at the branch. Yet we expect them to take every responsibility for a customer transformation through the application and implementation of new technologies, new processes, new products, etc. There are some banks running around the world where a CSA, a customer service assistant, needs to understand the complexities of asset and liability products on a scale of about 300 product sets, 300 product variations. We don't make it easy for the great customer experience. We don't make it easy. There are contact centres operating in this world where most of the operators in the contact centre have multi-jointed fingers and thumbs because they have to work through about 5 or 6 or 7 different systems in order to be able to have a tangible conversation with the customer. So this leads to my case study where actually we solved that problem. We wanted to change the customer experience by simplifying the integration between all the bank systems and the customer. And we needed that technology to underpin a cultural change that made that bank customer-centric, that actually was the foundation for that particular bank to become the leading customer service bank in the country. Only 21,000 staff needed to be trained, so not scale, not a challenge. What was interesting was some of the staff had never used a GUI screen before, could only use green screen, and had never used a mouse. And this was a system that was going to be GUI that required the use of a mouse. So we had to train staff from ground zero up to how to do that. 1,280 points of presence, a few less than that now. A training team of 130 deployed across the country, but also catching multiple iterations of the software or the underlying application to support this, and delivered over 20 months. So when you've got a really challenging, hard project that needs to happen over that period of time, the first thing you do is go to Tasmania, where if something goes wrong, no one will notice. So this comes back to the underlying process, the underlying principle of test, test, test. Population of Tasmania, 450,000 it was in that time. 43 branches. Part of this transformation was actually about swapping out fundamental old infrastructure with new infrastructure. So we piloted. We did it for 4 months. We got really, really good at training, really, really good at deployment, really, really good at software, really, really good at change. And then we went to the mainland. And as a result, we actually bought the 20-month program was compacted into about 14 months, which was great because I think if it had gone for 15 months, I probably would have died because it was we had to do everything on the weekend. The nature of the change out of the system, going from an old Windows base to a new Windows base, was pretty challenging. And it was across multiple business units. So it wasn't just across the retail bank, it was across operations, business bank, contact centres. But we piloted it. We learnt as much as we possibly could. We created value in the delivery mechanism. We made sure, checked and balanced it was aligned to the strategy. We made sure, checked and balanced that things were going to happen the way they needed to happen. And then we went on the national rollout march. And the most important thing from my perspective, created a great team, no one died. Not a single branch could not open to serve our customers. Not a single contact centre lost any time in serving our customers. And in fact, what it did challenge us about was how could we do this on other initiatives and other programs. The way I've done that is I've taken all the tools that I applied here, which are all the ones that I've shared with you up to date, and just reconfigured them based on the need, based on the outcome. We also got this idea, and this looks a bit agile. It was quite revolutionary. I remember drawing it on the whiteboard. We said, it doesn't have to be perfect. Let's get as much as we can get done in a short time. And actually, if you overlaid agile software development on that, you'd see that we have a backlog, we have some epics, we're quickly working through features and functions, and we're delivering them in sprints. Well, that book hadn't been written back in the sort of early 2000s. It probably had, I hadn't read it. But, so it was, again, what you all have in spades, common sense applied to solving complex problems. So 10 key success factors. How are we doing on time, Ray? Okay. So I'll just finish off on this, and then Ray's going to ask me some probing questions, which he's given me previously, which aren't very probing. So 10 key success factors. And again, I'm not giving you a manifesto here. I'm giving you some ideas, some guidelines. I'm giving you the opportunity to take and shape those for your own benefit so that you can do a better job in creating value for your organisations. You can do a better job getting your team engaged to help your organisations get better faster and deliver greater value and greater outcomes. So not brain surgery, not rocket science at all. Understand the needs of all user groups. There's not much point in putting something out that only 50% of the organisation actually gets and 100% needs. So understand all user groups. Your change management effort around impact assessment up front is fundamental. Remove barriers to adoption. Make it easy. I have this great concept where I'm working now called Mr. Easy. And Mr. Easy makes things easy for people to do stuff. Because we all want to do stuff, but we don't like doing complicated stuff. So make sure you understand what the barriers to adoption are, because if you don't understand that, then you won't get the success that you need. It's all about change leadership, but actually in every one of your cases, it's all about leadership. And there are two concepts here, leadership and followship. To earn the right as a leader, you have to demonstrate leadership, you have to be consistent, you have to be clear, you have to demonstrate the values of the organisation in which you work, and you have to earn the respect of those people that need to follow. But change leadership is actually taking consideration of everyone who you're going to affect in your delivery and bringing that to bear. Providing adequate support. My method is, what do you need? Not, this is all you have. Because I figure if I can have the conversation around what do you need, then actually the people will self-regulate and actually give me what I want with what they have. As opposed to, oh, well, I need a Ferrari. Well, actually, no, you need a bicycle. So let's work that through. Seeking continuous feedback. Nothing worse than pushing down as a leader in delivery and transformation and not getting anything back. So be actually quite ruthless and relentless in seeking feedback, but very open. Not much point in getting feedback and not acting on it either. Coordinating all parties. So again, it's a bit related to make sure you understand all user groups, because if you don't coordinate all those user groups, if you don't exemplify change leadership, then you'll miss the point. Knowing the environments you're deploying to, absolutely. Anyone done a data centre relocation? Aren't they fun? Well, you know, when you move something that's physically coded to the environment, and actually you're expecting it to be logically coded, and suddenly the net bank's not working, people get upset really, really quickly, especially when you've unplugged it. That only happened once, but that's okay. Got through that one. Test thoroughly. And again, the Tasmanian example is an absolute example of how we tested thoroughly. We tested thoroughly because actually if you test, then you won't get any surprises. And as we're moving through this continuous delivery DevOps environment, your ability to test, especially when you're doing 2-week feature drops, your ability to test is going to be improved, and therefore you won't be disruptive. You know, too many own goals are kicked by organisations because they haven't tested thoroughly. Always have a contingency plan. That may be tickets to Argentina or Brazil, but always have a contingency plan. It's really important that you also communicate that contingency plan to your sponsors and to your teams so they understand that if the balloon goes up, they know what to do. And the final one is be courageous about go, no go. How many times have we put stuff into production that actually we didn't feel really good about? Too many times. Too many times. So define your go, no go criteria. Make sure you adhere to it. There's an example in case where code was dropped too early and the organisation suffered 7 SEV1s in a week. Bad outcome for the customer because they didn't have the courage. Well, they hadn't defined properly, but they didn't have the courage around go, no go. So pretty straightforward. Questions?